Was the hardest decision was to continue the path I chose during high school.
The hardest choice in my life was to decide what I want to do as a career.
Hardest thing in my life, decision I had to make would be breaking up with my boyfriend of 12 years.
When you are faced with making career choices versus family choices at the same time.
Was the hardest decision was to continue the path I chose during high school, because when I entered high school I had an idea of what I wanted to do with my life, but in the meantime time of being in high school that career path changed very drastically. So those subjects that I was working on then was really not something that I found so difficult continuing doing, and the decision on staying in high school and finishing what I started was the hardest decision, because I could pull out if I wanted to, but I chose to stay in there and continue what I decided to do, because it was tough work, and the people I went with, for them it was easy because they knew what they wanted to do, and I really struggled.
The hardest choice in my life was to decide what I want to do as a career, and there's a lot of factors involved. First, I want to be happy. Second, I want to make my mom proud. And third, I want to make a lot of money. So I chose a career path that would help me on that. But it took a lot of work, a lot of schooling to get there. I went to community college and determined that I wanted to do broadcasting. But I wasn't quite sure which type of broadcasting, so I did radio. Did that for 2 years, determined that I didn't like it, so I got into television. And so in terms of schooling, it took me about 6 years of school, but I got 2 degrees out of it, and then I got a job in my field, and then I just kind of worked my way up along the way.
It was hard for me to choose between my previous job and my new business, but if you can start it, you can do it. I was very unhappy in there. And then now I have a company about plants or something, some green things. And I'm happy.
When you are faced with making career choices versus family choices at the same time. If I ever had to look back, is some of the choices I made that were career-oriented and didn't take into account long-term ramifications for family choices. I would have made different decisions many years ago related to my career, related to, certainly related to family choices. Looking back on it, I would have not taken the 3 or 4 years of strain and creating some collateral damage with my family in order to be able to save businesses. Businesses at the time, there was too much focus on business. There should have been more of a focus on family. That's the meaning that I have for that.
Hardest thing in my life, decision I had to make would be breaking up with my boyfriend of 12 years. He was actually the person that got me started taking my photography, and we were best friends. And then, when you get older, my viewing of him changed, and how I became a person has changed and evolved over the past years, where he kind of stayed the same. And he had a lot of animosity towards my art, because I was starting to get a little bit bigger and a little bit better, and he was kind of not staying at the same kind of job that he hated. So breaking up with him was like the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. Because even though I fell out of love, I still love him as a person. So that was probably like the hardest thing I had to do, and telling someone that you've known for so long and you grew up with that you're not into it anymore. So that was the hardest thing for me.
The hardest choice that I ever made in my life was to forgive my mother for what I thought was a mistake that she made raising me. She decided not to. She made a lot of mistakes when she was young. She grew up very poor in the Dominican Republic, and she wanted to have an American daughter, so she came to this country as an immigrant when she was pregnant of me. And I didn't know for many years who my father was, where I belong in the world, or where my culture. I had a lot of identity issues, and I blamed my mother for it. And I always felt if she would have stayed with my father, or she would have tried to, be married and have more money, my life would have been better. And why do I have to work so hard? And I blame my mother all the time for all the mistakes. And then one day I realized that blaming my mother all the time was making me feel very angry, and my heart, was looking at the world. I hated it. I didn't want to be here. I didn't feel like I belonged, and I was starting to just hate everybody and push everybody away, and all the beautiful things that I used to love, I started to hate them, and I didn't understand why I was alive. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be here because it's not fair. My mother should not have had me if she wasn't going to raise me with a good family with money. And then one day I understood that was a lie, that's not true. That my mother did the best that she could, and that I am here, and that I am alive, and that I'm healthy, that I'm breathing, and that I can see the sun and the light. And that is the greatest gift that she gave me. She gave me a chance to be on earth, to experience beauty and joy and pain and anger. And that's what we're here for, to experience.
The hardest choice that I had to make in my life is probably to let the fears go. I had a fear of failure. I had a fear of not being liked. I had the fear of not being complete for whatever reason. It was probably the hardest thing for me to do, when you just say, let it go, you are what you are, you can't change. And the way I overcame it is probably by sitting down and actually being quiet and asking myself, what's going on? Is that something in my childhood that made me this way? Is that something that my friends made me to realize I'm a little bit different versus them? Just realizing what's the true source, but mostly sitting down and asking yourself tons of questions. That's the only way to come up with answers. Just being quiet and being alone.
It's gotta be like the intro to the movie.
A decision to make the day meaningful. As you age, living has a different purpose, and you wonder about its existence and what you must do. So every day, as I choose what I'm going to do for that day is my most difficult decision.
I'm actually done with my degree this summer, so I'm going to figure out what I want to work with for real. I want to figure out what it is I want to do. Looking at the interests I've had during my university, what was it that I found interesting? I did a internship for a global clothing line, and I found that really interesting. So maybe that's a path I want to work with in fashion. If you have all your knowledge and you're fresh out of school, then you can be quite picky about what jobs you want to have. But if you in 6 months haven't found anything and haven't had any interviews, maybe then it's time for you to open your horizon and say, okay, maybe it isn't fashion that I want to go into, but what is it that I'm good at elsewhere? And try to open your horizon in that point of view.
Decide what it is that you want to do, Number 2, figure out a path to get there. Number 3, do the path. So I went to school, got an education in my field of choice, which is broadcasting, and then we work along the way to come up with, you figure out where you want to go, and then you figure out steps to get there. And I've been working in my career for about 14, 15 years now, and it's worked out. But it all started maybe 20 years ago when I decided what it is that I wanted to do. More important is the love of what you do. So money's not a factor when you love your job. And the fact that I love my job kept me doing it while I did not make a lot of money. And then it came to a point where I started making some money, and you start to benefit from all the hard work that you put in.
Even if you need to make a hard decision, you just sit down and you say, what does your gut feeling say? Your gut feeling never lies. So you sit down and you ask yourself, does it feel like a good thing? And most importantly, is it going to make me happy? I understand it's going to make my friends happy, my family happy, my dog happy, but is it going to make me happy? Because at the end of the day, it's great you can make others happy, but you're going to be unhappy, and that's what really matters.
No, I don't regret the decision. I don't think anybody should live their life in a loveless life. I think everyone also should be able to support each other no matter what. So having constant support and pushing you, especially with art, is very tough. So it has to be a very strong person behind you, and I think no one should have to make any compromises according to what your passions are and who you want and who you love. You should love unconditionally, and there shouldn't be any doubts.
If I had to do it over again, I would go much slower when I got out of college, and I would take care of my financial needs on the side, and I would do something that was interesting and something that I liked, rather than going into a job or a career focus just to make money.